Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Peter. It's my pleasure this morning to start your day with food safety. And it was very enlightening to speak with some of you yesterday and to realize how committed you are, many of you, to the question of food safety. It's something I think that interests everybody. Here we are. It's great to be alive, isn't it? At 8 o'clock in the morning. With the rain outside. I think a lot of it is due to what nutrition has done for us. I was looking around the room and I realized that about half of us have already exceeded the life expectancy that was set for people in 1910. This is due to nutrition, it's due to food safety, it's due to food technology. It's due to improving standards. So my task this morning in the next 30 minutes or so is really to outline for you how Nestlé combines foresight, strong vigilance, and harmonized standards to lead the way in food safety. Now, if I can find the slide changer, I'll just give you a brief outline of what I'm going to speak about. So first of all, it may seem obvious to you, but I want to maybe state the obvious to begin with and explain why food safety and food quality is becoming so complicated. It's complicated for consumers, it's complicated for the experts, it's complicated for everybody. It's got to be managed, it's got to be addressed. I don't want to give you a blow-by-blow account of food safety at Nestlé. I think you'd go back to sleep very quickly. But I want to outline our approach to food safety and to give you some concrete examples of really how we master the subject. We have a strong emphasis on foresight, a strong emphasis on an early warning system. We have, in my department at NRC, the Nestlé Research Center, we have the Nestlé Early Warning System for food safety and nutrition. We have a strong focus on R&D on quality by design, so that process begins at the first step in product concept. And I'm going to give you some examples there of where we build tools, where we build competencies, where we combine these really to design better quality products. And then finally, all of the rest is inputs. It's about what we do. What we achieve is more important, of course. So it's all for nothing without measuring performance. So I'll spend a few minutes about the measurement of performance, especially around the functioning of our laboratories at Nestlé, and some data on recalls and withdrawals. And these challenges, of course, apply to all of the food industry, not just to Nestlé. Now, complexity. First of all, it's fair to say, I think, that global food supply chains are driving complexity currently. And the ongoing need for harmonized regulations and standards. So to work in a level playing field, Nestlé needs harmonized regulations and standards worldwide. And we're driving that. What we're seeing a lot of now, especially in Europe, but also in other countries, we're seeing a lot of the public perceptions driving decision-making at regulatory level. So we're seeing the public perception driving risk advocacy, which then drives decision-making. I'll give you two examples of that. One example is the area of colorants in Europe, where there was some scientific evidence, but certainly a lot of consumer concern in this area about the use of colorants and the relationship with hyperactivity. Another area, of course, is where the risk perception on the presence of endocrine active substances in the diet is really perceived to be quite a bad thing, and it's driving a lot of the regulatory decision-making currently. The emerging risks landscape for food safety is changing almost on a weekly basis. And that needs to be understood, and it needs to be managed. I'll give you one example here, is the area of foods of non-animal origin. Classically, we worried about beef, we worried about milk, we worried about honey. We worried about the products coming from live animals, effectively. We didn't spend a lot of time worrying about salads and fruit. increasingly, of course, we're seeing foodborne infections coming from those sources. So we're changing our focus a little bit. A classic example where this happened, it was in Germany in 2011, where we had the outbreak of the pathogenic E. coli, which killed 50 people and made about 3,000 people sick. This is a big deal. We have to take care of that. We are seeing increased monitoring of the food chain by all stakeholders. We're doing more monitoring, the authorities are doing more monitoring, the NGOs are doing more monitoring, and the consumer organizations are doing more monitoring. Needless to say, of course, one of the highlights or lowlights of 2013 was the horse meat scandal in Europe. And of course, concerns about adulteration and food fraud are very high on the agenda following that, but they have been for quite a long time. They have been very much on the public agenda since melamine in 2008. And then finally, I think all of this amounts to one conclusion. Error tolerances for food safety are shrinking, and the cost of mistakes is increasing. Some of you asked me over dinner last night, what's the cost of food safety? What's the value of the investment? One example we give a lot is a company called the Peanut Corporation of America, which had a food safety problem in around 2009. 3,000 products plus were withdrawn from the market in the US. Many people were ill, and that company went bankrupt as a consequence. So mistakes are costly. Now, building on this theme of the complexity of food safety, I want to give just one concrete example here in the area of communication and the speed of communication. I got these data from my colleague Mary Friel, who used to work for me when I was head of the Food Safety Authority of Ireland in my previous life. And it just shows, as an example, from 2008 to 2011, the different uses of the social media in relation to food safety crises. So during the Irish dioxin crisis in 2008, when I was actually in charge of the food safety system in Ireland, we only had about 1,000 social media posts. Most of the communication traffic was by conventional media, radio phone-ins, calls to helplines. Move on 2 years to the German dioxin crisis, and it's increased to 26,000. Move on to the pathogenic E. coli crisis in 2011, and it's up to 100,000. Now, put this in context as well of the changes in the use of social media. In 2009, there were 18 million Twitter users. Today, there are 200 million. In 2009, there were 200 million Facebook accounts. Today, there are 1 billion. So very much, the social media is changing the speed, and it's changing the complexity of consumer communication. I want to say a few words about how we tackle food safety at Nestlé. First of all, it starts with corporate business principles. You may be aware we have 10 corporate business principles, and they're mandatory for all staff. Corporate business principle number 2 is to taking care of food safety and food quality by never compromising on food safety or quality. So that is in everybody's mind from the get-go in Nestlé. It's then translated into a corporate quality policy, which encompasses 3 major elements. The first, of course, is full safety, full food safety, and full compliance. Compliance with our internal regulations. We have about 100 internal rules for food safety, and of course, all of the external regulatory requirements. It encompasses, secondly, consumer preference for our products and satisfaction with our brands. And then finally, something that people often forget is that there is a relationship, of course, between waste and product quality. If you have non-quality, you have a wasted product, so you end up losing money because of the destruction of that product. So zero waste, of course, is also a very important objective. Getting it right first time. Quality, people are reminded, is everybody's commitment. Everybody in the company, from offices to laboratories to factory floors. This slide I'm going to show you is the most important slide of my presentation. It captures really how our approach, how our philosophy has changed in recent years. We have moved very much. I lead a technical team, and that technical team very much often is focused just on the technicalities, which of course are very interesting, but that's not the impact. The impact is here at the consumer level. So we're very much moving from the scientific and technical focus in quality management and safety to a consumer focus. What counts at the end of the day is protecting the consumer. I lead a passionate group of people. What unites us very often is the passion for this endpoint here. Secondly, historically, one looked at product quality control. We were focused on the end product, focused on measurement of parameters in that product. This is too simplistic. This does not work. What works is looking at the entire supply chain from beginning to end, farm to fork, as it were, and really we've moved from quality control to quality management in our philosophy. Thirdly, we were very much focused in the past on detecting defects. Can we pick up defects in the finished product? And again, this is rather short-sighted because it's a very reactive way of looking at things, and it's too late, of course. If you get a defect in the product, what do? You dump the product. So we're very much moved to the challenge of interpreting where the problems come from, challenging our people to understand, to do the root causes, and do something about it. So this, again, is moving toward prevention of problems, not simply detecting them and then having a wasted product. And then finally, and most importantly, having a reactive focus is still important. We have to have the capacity to react quickly in the event of a problem. There will always be Fukushima nuclear disasters. Fortunately, not very often, but they happen. We have to be ready for that. But we have moved very much from a reactive focus to a proactive focus using our internal early warning system to anticipate problems and to tackle them before they impact, before they become a problem for us. Now, food safety at Nestlé, indeed in many companies, is not about one thing. What makes it special for Nestlé, what gives us the edge, is that we combine several steps in a special way. So we have 5 key elements which are combined really to give us the belt and braces or the chain approach to protecting the consumer. First of all, we have a strong supplier audit and verification system. We take care at farm level, at supplier level, that our suppliers have been approved, have been audited, and are supplying, have a fit-for-purpose food safety management system. That's another important point. Prerequisites means the engineering, the plants, the floors, the pipelines, the valves, the pumps, the infrastructure that has to be in place across of our manufacturing operation to deliver safe products. It includes GMP, good manufacturing practice. All of this is held together by food safety management plans. Some of you may have heard of the concept of HACCP. HACCP means hazard analysis, critical control points. It's 50 years old this year. It was invented to support the space program in the US. Why is it important in space? Well, diarrhea and vomiting wouldn't be very nice in a spacesuit. I don't know whether you can get a spacesuit dry cleaned, but in any case, these things have to be managed. So 50 years ago, the Pillsbury company developed what we call today a HACCP, and is currently in the form of an ISO standard called 22000. And of course, this is mandatory in all of our plants. Then we have risk assessment. My team at the Nestlé Research Center have competence in risk assessment for microbiology, risk assessment for food chemical risks. And this really is what verifies that everything else is working. These are the guys that really are the reflector for quality management. They reflect back whether something is safe or not safe. And finally, then we have the analytical verification. This is the laboratory that at the end of the day takes the finished product or the raw material, does a safety check, and will give a green light or a red light depending on whether the product can be released or not. Now, in terms of organization then, food safety and quality at Nestlé is directed, it's with the responsibility of the VP for quality management here at the headquarters building. He leads a small team of about 15 people, and is supported then by a lot of experts and a lot of competence in different parts of the company. So we have 2 research centers, the Nestlé Research Center and the Nestlé Institute of Health Sciences. We have in the Nestlé Research Center about 200 people that are competent in the area of food safety. And the 3 main areas they work on is the area of risk assessment, micro and chemical, the area of analytical sciences, and the area of early warning and foresight. At the level of the product technology centers, we call them the PTCs, we have product-specific experts. For example, you've got experts at Conalfingen on the dairy chain, you've got experts in Orb on the coffee chain, for example. So they're product-specific. And then in some of the R&D centers, for example, at Singapore, we've got a focus on the safety and the quality of traditional Chinese ingredients. I'm going to say some more about the Nestlé Quality Assurance Centers in a future slide. These are called the NQACs. So I'll leave that. And then, of course, at each factory, we have a quality team supported by a small laboratory. The most important thing in food safety is the passion of the people. So, and to support that, of course, we have an ongoing program of competence building and competence transfer. We have one of these courses happening this week at NRC. It's very important that we are constantly training our staff, building a culture of food safety from the NRC, from the R&D side, which is then transferred into operations. We're fortunate in Nestlé. We have a number of internationally recognized experts in food safety. One of the people here is Jean-Louis Cordier, who is a well-known expert in food microbiology, a member of the International Commission on the Microbial Specifications of Foods, for example. And the good thing is that we are constantly recruiting young staff. We recruited 14 extra microbiologists in the last 3 years, and we're inducting them into the program of food safety at Nestlé. So they're the champions of the future for us. I said I would mention the Nestlé Quality Assurance Centers. I think in the last 2 years, 3 years, this has been one of the most important milestones in food safety management at Nestlé. These are regional laboratories established around the world. There are 25 of them. They're state-of-the-art laboratories. The big ones are in Dublin, Ohio, Cergy in France, and Singapore. They're not just analytical services. There's about 1,000 people concerned here. But what adds the value of these laboratories is the fact that you've got state-of-the-art analytical services supported by third-party accreditation to the lab standard, ISO 17025. What is important is that they supply lab data with an expert interpretation by an expert, a Nestlé expert, who is expert on Nestlé products. And that's important because they're giving advice to quality managers, not just on the results of the analysis, but on what actions should be taken in relation to compliance, in relation to precautionary measures. They also have, of course, verification and audit teams in these laboratories as well. So we're about to expand the number. We're going to open a new laboratory in Abidjan in the very near future. These laboratories, incidentally, do about 11,500 tests a week, mainly at the high level. So the pesticide testing, for example, the more challenging testing is done by these laboratories. I said I'd mention a little bit about the foresight system, the early warning system. The way we look at early warning and emerging issues is very much based on something that was championed about 20 years ago by a man called Patrick Lagadac. He works at the École Polytechnique in France. And it's very much based on the fact that if you can prevent signals turning into issues, turning into incidents by early management, you can actually avoid crises and major incidents. So it's very much reading the signals that indicate a potential problem. It's a very intensive work, but it can be very effective as well. And so the idea is that we want to follow the green pathway rather than the red one. How does it work? Well, it works very much in two ways. We have leveraged our internal expertise and scale to build an expert network of 150 people. It's worldwide, it's multidisciplinary, it applies to both operations and to R&D. That's the most important element. People are the most important part of it. And they share data every day. They do that with the help of digital tools. We use two digital tools. One is Digimind, which is a web scouting tool. We also use increasingly Radiant 6, which is used to look at the social media and what discussions are taking place on the internet. So we're taking really a lot of data from blogs, from microblogs, from macroblogs, from governments, from publications, universities, networks, analytical data. You know, the other thing we're leveraging, you will remember Globe. Globe was, when it started, the largest IT project in the world. And one element of Globe that most people don't know about is the part of Globe that stores analytical data. So we've been storing data now in Globe for many years. And we can mine that data for trends and information. And it's now starting to look very interesting for people like me, because we can start to say, well, is something going on in the data that really needs to be looked into? So we do about 300,000 scouts a year. We narrow that down then through internal meetings. We keep a lot of data on record so we can backtrack if necessary. We have, within our Outlook system, Microsoft Outlook, we have RSS feeds. So we feed on a daily basis information on trends to most of our quality team. So there's about 1,000 of these a year. And at the end of this, when we've whittled it down to about 15 or 20, we have a corporate level, an issue roundtable, which meets every month. It's co-chaired by 2 members of the executive board. And this is the point where we set priorities, attribute actions, responsibilities, etc., and resources. So this is when things get done and when things get followed up. And this is important. Then just to give you an example of one case where this is the analysis from Digimind, the Digimind package on the horse meat crisis, just to show what we can see. So we can see really where things, from a web point of view, where things are hot in the world. We can link publications to the mapping. And we can see for the horse meat crisis, you know, in Ireland, things started on the 16th of January when the report was that 30% of burgers that were sampled were found to be contaminated with horse meat. We started working in the Nestlé Research Center on the problem on the 8th of February. Up to this point, of course, it was assumed that horse meat was just a UK and Ireland issue. It wasn't known at that point that this was Europe-wide, and it was a very widespread fraud indeed. So then we go from the 16th to the 2nd, and finally, on the 16th of February, Saturday morning at 2 a.m., I got a call to say that we had found a positive for horse DNA in one of our products. That was the 16th. On the 19th, we changed our policy for quality radically, and we introduced a mandatory screening step for raw materials, for beef raw materials, which screened all of our beef raw materials for the presence of equine DNA. Between the 16th of February and the end of February, we conducted at the Nestlé Research Center about 650 tests for horse DNA. And then at that point, we had developed 2 new methods for species identification. We now have a multiplex method which tests pork, beef, and horse. And that's implemented in 2 laboratories. One is in Padova in Italy. The other is in Cergy in France. To date, we've done almost 3,000 tests. We've done many tests, of course, externally as well for third-party verification. Does it stop there? No, it doesn't. We have very much become molecular detectives. And we are aware in some countries that we need to be vigilant and really be ready to test for the possibility of other species getting into the food chain that shouldn't be there. The pork issue was especially important because of halal, of course. So we're looking at moving targets. Makes life very interesting and sometimes a little bit stressful. I want to give you an example of where we looked at 2 issues in early warning where we had a positive outcome, where we detected issues early, which if we hadn't done might have become more serious. One was in relation to a bit of news we got from China that a company in China was detected using waste leather tanning liqueur as a source of cheap protein. So this photograph here, you might be wondering, what is it? I know it's early in the morning, but bear with me. So this is leather, and this is a tanning tank. And this is really a chemical cocktail of chromium salts and other things. Now what happens is you get proteins coming out of the skins, and somebody had a great idea, let's sell the proteins to a food company. And somebody fell for it. So we heard about this, and we said, okay, we're going to take care here. We're going to look at ingredients just to check, just to be sure. We used 2 markers. We used chromium and another chemical called hydroxyproline. We did about 3,000 tests on 12 different classes of raw materials, and we found no evidence. So we went back to sleep again. We said, this is fine. This was 2010, and in 2012, of course, things started to heat up again, and the authorities in Europe started getting news that the gelatin capsules and gelatin in use in other potential ingredients may have been contaminated with chromium coming from here. So we were able to share our data with the authorities on that occasion and help to inform the discussion. So again, it's good to be ahead of the curve and avoid panic when these things happen. Finally, so it was really very much a local issue. Secondly, in 2008, there were several publications that came out about the possible presence of pharmaceutical residues in drinking water. And we decided we would, as part of an ongoing chemical surveillance, we do every year a large chemical surveillance plan, we decided to include some of these substances in a global survey of water supplies, both public and private. We looked at about 160 of these water supplies worldwide. We did 120,000 tests, including about 43 pharmaceutical residues. And the interesting thing is that analytical technology now is so advanced that you can pick things up down to parts per trillion levels. Now, parts per trillion is not much. You're talking about really bottles of wine in Lac Léman. It's a very, very small amount. So we could find levels detected, but risk assessments gave no cause for concern. So we looked at this as reassuring. Yes, analytical technology can find things if you look hard enough, but from a risk point of view, we don't have any problem with that. The European authorities, of course, have started to discuss it, not just in relation to water, but in the entire supply chain. And they asked for feedback on this in 2012, and we were able to share data with them, again, to inform the discussion. So we look at this very much as a responsibility. It's nice for us as a company to eliminate the uncertainty, but it's also important to alleviate the fears at public level and to support the authorities in relation to their endeavors to do that. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples. Quality by design is rather methodical and systematic. I want to just give you a few examples here as a flavor. First of all, we see increasingly foodborne risks coming to the fore. We see more viruses. We see the emerging issue with the pathogenic E. coli's. So in response to that, we've spent 3 years planning and about 5 million of an investment to build new laboratories at the Nestlé Research Center. These have a total area of about 1,000 square meters. They're the most up-to-date in the food industry. This 1,000 square meters includes 150 meters squared at biosafety protection level 3. This is the second highest level of biosafety protection. People have to enter through an airlock. They have to have extensive training. They don't wear the spacesuits, but they have to take special precautions in those areas. So the key areas that we're targeting: virology, hepatitis A virus, norovirus, and what we call Shiga toxin producing E. coli. These are the pathogenic E. coli organisms. We couple this, of course, with the recruitment, as I mentioned earlier, of the 14 new microbiologists. So we've added competence and we've added infrastructure. I mentioned in my title our commitment to harmonized standards. Nestlé has been traditionally very committed to supporting the organizations on this slide. In particular, the Association of Official Analytical Chemists. So this is the most recognized organization worldwide supporting standards for analytical science for measuring parameters in food. The next president of the AOAC, which, by the way, is an American organization, the next president is Eric Konings, who is a member of my team at NRC. So a Nestlé president, and secondly, we have a member of the scientific committee and several people who are active on the subcommittees. The goal here is fit for purpose analytical standards. There's a large project going on here, which is called SPIFAN. It's dedicated to the development of harmonized methods for the analysis of infant formula worldwide. We have governments involved, we've got other companies involved, and of course the parent organization is AOAC. So this will help us. One of the key goals we have is perfect alignment of our methods with the official methods in use by official laboratories. It helps discussion. It helps to have dialogue with the authorities when that's necessary. We do not want to live in a world where everybody uses a different method and gets a different result. That wouldn't be good for business. So that's one organization. Codex, of course, the Codex Alimentarius Commission is jointly the responsibility of FAO, WHO. It is an intergovernmental organization, so companies like Nestlé cannot be members, but we are, of course, observers at the meetings, and we are really involved in areas of activity where we believe there is an opportunity to reinforce standards. These areas, for example, presently are the Codex Committee for Methods of Analysis and Sampling, the Codex Meeting on Pesticide Residues, and the Codex Committee on Food Hygiene. We've had members of the ICMSF board. This is the International Commission on Microbial Specifications of Foods. We've had board members for several years. The Commission Européenne for Normalisation. Also, we're involved in standard development there. We're very committed as a company, but also in my part of the company to ISO and building ISO standards for food. And then finally, of course, the International Dairy Federation. Second example is new tools for screening the safety of products. It's evolving constantly. If we stand still, we are dead in the area of food safety. So one area we are working on currently is something you may have heard of. It's called bisphenol A. It's an endocrine active substance. I don't know if any of you ever saw the book. There was a book published in the 90s called Our Stolen Future. And it set everybody thinking about these endocrine disrupting chemicals in the environment and in the food. The subtitle here is, Are We Threatening Our Fertility, Intelligence and Survival? It's quite a dramatic title. But bisphenol A is an endocrine active material. We are committed to, we have already taken it out of all food contact materials in the infant formula area, infant food area, and we are committed to having it out of every single food product in the very near future. So that's a big commitment. We have about 150 ongoing projects and operations to do that. But the challenge is, of course, we're going to take out this packaging material with proven performance. We've got a history of experience with this, and we're going to put in a new material. How do we assure the safety of the new material? Well, one thing we did is we said, okay, could the authorities give us guidelines on selection of safe materials? And they said, no, that's not possible right now. So we are committed to making sure that we take the leadership role here by applying a new biological screening approach based on biological activities for different endocrine hormonal activities in the alternative packaging materials. And to achieve this, of course, we will work with regulators and external scientific organizations like the International Life Sciences Institute to achieve scientific consensus. We will also, of course, need to work with the packaging suppliers to ensure that their materials are screened according to the agreed screening protocols. So this is taking care that we're not creating a new problem, that the future is going to be safer than the situation we have today. Now, a third example is in the area of analysis. And I know this slide is a bit complex, but imagine, if you will, the current complexity of the chemical environment. There are approximately 3,000 chemical contaminants regulated in food. How do we manage that? It's a lot of things to keep track of at the same time. So we're improving our tracking by improving our screening tools. So the screening tools increasingly are looking at many things at the same time. Especially it's true of pesticides. There are approximately 1,000 pesticides regulated in Europe, many more internationally. And our pesticide technology now can measure 500 pesticides in one run. These are just screens. You get a very quick snapshot of what's going on, and then it helps you to target, if you've got a problem, to investigate in more detail. We've done similar things with antibiotic residues. There are many veterinary drugs in use worldwide, many hundred. Antibiotics is an area especially that we have to be careful of in milk. We have to take care that we are really tracking these, so we can track in one run, in one 20-minute run, we can actually monitor 80 of these. And finally, a final example is at a factory level. I mentioned adulteration. How do we take care more proactively that we're not buying adulterated material from suppliers? So one way we're doing this is we're applying what we call in the scientific world non-targeted approaches. This is fingerprinting. So we're using a tool called Fourier Transform Infrared Spectroscopy, FTIR, to do a quick fingerprint of milk samples as they arrive in our Shuansheng factory. This is the pilot for this technology. So we have there about 10,000 farmers. We've got 81 milk collection centers, very fragmented. 200 lorries a day, and we do about 2,000 milk analysis a day. Now, we use the technology already. The nice thing about this is that we use the technology to pay the farmers for the milk. It's already there. We already have 20 factories with the technology installed. And we're only using it to measure protein, carbohydrate, the major ingredients, and we pay the farmers on that basis. So somebody said, why not exploit the full potential of the technology and do a full fingerprint, and then we can see what's normal. So now we have two pieces of information. We've got the payment data for the milk payroll, but we also have what is normal, a normal sample. And if it deviates from that, we investigate. So it's still being fine-tuned. We are perfecting it in this plant, and we will roll it out to other plants eventually. And I think this gives us a lot of peace of mind that we're going to pick things up. It's not just our peace of mind, it's also a deterrence to those who might try to slip in something that shouldn't be there. Now, finally, I'm going to spend a few minutes wrapping up, looking at measurement of performance in about 3 or 4 slides. So first of all, I want to talk about the analytical side. The Nestlé laboratories are a major asset. They do about 100 million tests a year currently. It sounds like a lot. It boils down to about 260,000 tests a week in factories and about 11,500 tests a week in the NQAC laboratories. It includes, for example, about 1.2 million tests for Salmonella. It includes about 800,000 for the hygiene indicator Enterobacteriaceae and about 50,000 Listeria. Now, these tests underpin important food safety decisions, of course, and this is why we need competent people to interpret and give advice on the actions required of the results. Why are the data so important? Well, a recent report, just to highlight, a recent report from the American Proficiency Institute highlighted for routine laboratories in the US, the risk of inaccuracies is up to 10% of false negatives and up to 4% of false positives. Now, false positives are not going to really be a problem for the consumer. It's just from our point of view, it's just waste. and you waste the product. So yes, it's got an economic cost, so you don't want false positives either. False negatives, on the other hand, could lead to you making a wrong decision. You may assume with your result that you have no salmonella, and you may have salmonella present. So it's important that this is 0, and this is 0 in both cases. This is why we take care that our labs are performing proficiently. We have an internal proficiency system. We have a laboratory standards and performance team. First of all, we invest in competent staff to make sure that our lab teams are proficient in what they do. We've got third-party accreditation. We've got the P-tests, the proficiency tests, and in this P-test program, we have enrolled about 850 laboratories. These are all the Nestlé labs and all of the external labs doing work on behalf of Nestlé. So it is the largest proficiency testing program of its kind in the world. We couple that with expert audits, and of course we have internal standards called laboratory instructions. There's about 750 of them. As I said earlier, we try to apply official methods whenever possible, and this issue of harmonization with the authorities and with other jurisdictions is also important. The subject of complaints and defects, of course, is handled at multiple levels, at corporate level, at regional and factory level. The trend is quite impressive in recent years. It's been downward for major incidents. These include recalls and withdrawals. And a lot of this is down to really an aggressive push to decrease defects. We have about 1,000 projects ongoing in operations. I was tempted to share some of it with you, but really it's a bit boring at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's very much about teams, about root causes, about dedicated, focused improvement. The Total Performance Management, TPM, is ongoing in Nestlé. This is a revolutionary tool also for quality management. We call it internally, Nestlé Continuous Excellence. It's very much a cultural tool. It's 80% behavior, 20% tools, but it's very much empowering people to see problems and to take action when necessary. It was really very much imported from the automobile industry, of course. And then finally, we have new tools like the quality pyramid and consumer defect tracking tools as well, which are having a positive impact. So to wrap up and summarize, food safety and quality is becoming more complex, but I think we have the tools to deal with that. We apply foresight and early warning tools to anticipate and ensure early management of emerging issues. Quality by design is important. It's a moving target. It's very much a priority to integrate safety into product development process and to build new tools to do that. Risk assessment tools, of course, permit us to be ambitious as well and to deliver new consumer offerings. We couldn't have delivered Babyness without a strong risk assessment team behind it. And we're constantly developing competence and appropriate standards, both internally and importantly in partnership with external standard setting organizations. So with that, I will stop and I look forward to your questions. Thank you. Sure.
Patrick Schwendimann, Zurich Cantonal Bank. How many control issues do you have a year? You're mentioning just the incidents, 26 so far, but how many control issues do you have?
What do you mean by control issues? Do you mean
that you have detected something which didn't go into an incident that you because of your testing?
Many. The way you leverage quality is by having things you can take action against. So the more measurements we're doing, some of which are very much at the early warning level, it doesn't signify a problem. It just signifies a signal that something must be done with. So that number is very, very large. I couldn't give you a precise figure, but it's our philosophy that we need to process consumer feedback. We need to process early signals of quality deviation so that we can take action. That's the key.
Howard Lax, National Bank of Canada. If you get a load of raw material in food form, such as seed or leafy vegetables or something from the farm, goes into your product, they'll test that. Would you ever go backwards and test the water on the farm, as an example?
Yeah, it's good that you bring this up. When you mention seeds and vegetable products, we issued a note this year, mid-year, reminding all of our businesses, all of our quality personnel worldwide to take care of water quality at farm level, personnel health at farm level, because the system is only as strong as the weakest link. If you've got strong HACCP and strong prerequisites in a factory and you've ignored the farm, you're leaving yourself wide open. So of course we have to take care of that. We have agronomists that visit farms that look at these things. They look at the chemicals and use the plant protection chemicals. They give advice on the optimal agronomic practices. So we take care of these things at farm level, for sure. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I'm even thinking of, say, fertilizer products that come from a
Yeah.
completely different source and
Mhm.
go into the planting.
And you're right. And increasingly looking at fertilizers, we're concerned with fertilizers, for example, that might contain high levels of arsenic or cadmium. So you have to go all the way back, because sometimes the root causes are there. You just have to get back to them, and you prevent it at the earliest step. Again, as I said earlier, there's no point in having a good analytical method to tell you what went wrong at the end if you're not doing something about it at the beginning.
Hi, John. It's Warren Ackerman at SocGen. You talked about the horse meat scandal, which I think was a fraud, not down to Nestlé, but can you touch on some of the other big recalls that you've had? I'm thinking about the pizza recall in Europe, where glass was found in pizza, and the recalls in the US with Waggin' Train, the pet snacks, which I think was a very significant recall, which cost Nestlé, I think, almost 100 million Swiss francs in the first half, and the reason why pet food margins were down. It seems to me, you're talking about food safety, but one could argue that the size of the recalls this year have been perhaps bigger than what we have seen previously. So I just wonder whether you can discuss the background to those two recalls.
Yeah.
How much it has cost you. And
Waggin' Train. Of course, Waggin' Train, the recall was initiated very early in the year. It was triggered by the presence of small amounts of an antibiotic, which were permitted in the country of manufacture, but not in the New York State where this thing was picked up. And Nestlé instituted a voluntary recall of the product. Our risk assessment concluded that the product was not unsafe. It was a safe product, and this was verified by the FDA. So it was not a safety recall, it was a non-compliance recall. So that was the reason for it. The Waggin' Train area, again, it highlighted, I think, for us that the importance of harmonized standards. We need a harmonized regulatory system everywhere we work. And this is vital to ensuring that if we manufacture and are compliant in one country, that we are compliant in the country where the product is then sold. I think what's important is that when you have foreign bodies in a product like you had with the pizza, that we take unequivocal action. In these cases, it's very black and white. If something goes wrong, and this did go wrong in this particular case, and I think we were working with a co-manufacturer in this particular case as well, that we take decisive action. It's very black and white from a food safety point of view. So in both of these cases, you mentioned cost, and I can't comment on that, but cost is not part of the decision making when it comes to a compliance or a food safety decision.
Jeremy.
Jeremy Fialco, Redburn here. Can you just talk a little bit more about what you do when you've had a major incident? So what your reporting processes are, what sort of actions you would decide to take in future, and those sorts of things. That's something I don't think you address so much in the presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, I think there's two elements to it. One is decisive action, and generally for major incidents, we have an executive board member who will chair the crisis committee, and it will happen very, very early. We're talking hours, same day responses. What is very important is to define a before and after, and to really commit to what will change to prevent any reoccurrence of a specific problem, but also to understand what actually went wrong when something has taken place, to actually take away learnings from that. So we actually improve quality. We believe passionately in continuous improvement. We are moving the Deming wheel each step at a time. So every crisis, every problem is also a learning for a solution for tomorrow. And we have to enter it, we have to look at it with that spirit in mind.
There's a persistent feeling on behalf of the public that container linings are contaminating, that have metal or plastic in them. The public seems to be constantly reassured with testing and so on, but many people in the public that I know, newspaper articles from time to time bring up the issue that the plastic or the metal lining is leaking in some way and it eventually pollutes you.
Plastics are generally quite complex chemically, and Nestlé has applied its own standards to the packaging suppliers. In fact, the Nestlé standard is really a de facto standard for the industry currently. We have a dedicated team of packaging safety experts, and I would argue they're among the best at that in the world. The advantage we have is that we look at it very much not from a chemical perspective, but from a consumer safety perspective. And yes, materials can migrate from plastics in some occasions, but what we try to do is we're working very much with the packaging suppliers to ensure regulatory compliance, because we insist on certificates of compliance from all of our suppliers. So that's the first step, but not stopping there. The reason we implemented the biological screening tool is that we want to really achieve a goal of as low as possible, a de minimis approach to the presence of chemicals in foods. This is coming from all sources. You cannot say zero, but our goal is optimizing the materials so that we are offering the best level of consumer protection. And this takes a lot of work with the packaging suppliers, because we have had to share with them our mindset as a food manufacturer, where we take care of food safety management plans. That culture in the packaging suppliers, of course, hasn't been that traditionally. Fortunately, our suppliers now are adopting that thinking as well. We work not only with the packaging suppliers, but also with the suppliers of the packaging suppliers. So we're really working with that supply chain, not just individual suppliers to us, but you have really in the industry, the packaging industry, a somewhat fragmented industry. You've got suppliers, and then you've got converters, and you've got finishers. So we're trying to unite that whole industry to give us a better deal as an end user of the product.
Fintan Ryan here from Berenberg. Just given that the horse meat scandal would seem to have arisen from a complex supply chain, has Nestlé instituted practices to cut out certain third parties from the supply chain and increase, I guess, the importance of certain suppliers? And is this just a Nestlé thing? And have you seen it also in the wider food industry?
I'll give you two answers to that. One is that horse meat took place because of criminal fraud, and those investigations are ongoing. Secondly, Nestlé, when it detected contaminated raw material that contained horse DNA, we changed suppliers. And I'll give you a third one. Today we test routinely for the presence of horse DNA, just to verify. You know, it's the principle being trust but verify. But yes, we have changed suppliers as well.
Jeff.
Jeff Stent, Exane. Just back to pet food. I think according to the FDA, you've had 6 recalls since 2009 in the US, which to the sort of layman appears a pretty big number. Is there anything specific about pet food that makes that a sort of more difficult category? Thanks.
Let me put that in context. In the US, pet food recalls are increasing exponentially. So we are seeing a lot of pet food recalls across the category in the US for different reasons. The reasons may be salmonella, for example, which may not be injurious to the pet, but of course, if you're handling it, you may infect yourself. So we have to take care of the human as well in the equation. Salmonella, molds, mycotoxins, of course, are important. Aflatoxin is especially something we take care of in pet food because dogs are more sensitive than we are. In some cases, it's fascinating for the scientists because dogs and cats can sometimes be more sensitive than humans to certain contaminants. So we have to take care of that. People care about their pets. We care about pets. So if it requires a decisive action, like a product recall, that's what we will do. So we're not really treating pet foods in a different way from where we treat other products. But we have, in that particular case, I've just transferred one of my experts to the pet care division. So we are putting a lot of resources now into that area in food safety.